We want to call to order the September 27th, 2022 Conservation Commission meeting. First, we'd like to stand and pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first item that we have on tonight's agenda was going to be a discussion with, for land conservation, Westport Land Trust with Ross Moran. That's going to be continued till October 11th meeting.
Correct.
So, first hearing we have is Richard Gidelli and Susan Schlesinger, repair a septic system in riverfront area, 99 Cummings Lane. Anyone here? Hey, Wendy, how you doing?
Wendy Henderson here for ABC Associates, representing Gidelli and Schlesinger for their proposed repair of their septic system and putting a couple extra buildings, small buildings on the property, a workshop and a proposed office. Resource areas we have here are river, salt marsh, bordering vegetated wetland, a coastal bank, limit of riverfront, flood zone boundary, and limit of riverfront, 200-foot riverfront. And the only activity in the resource areas is about 750 square feet of excavation and part of their septic system, about a little over about 2/3 of their septic system. Also adding a singular, a pump and a singular system, so it's denitrification. Looking for cards.
Wendy, sorry about that. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Did you have the green cards for that? Thank you very much. Sorry.
I've got the originals if you want to see those.
Do you need the originals?
It's a green piece of paper.
Oh, you're funny.
It's very original. I like her tact. It works.
So, as I said, the only activity we have is in the outer riverfront area, about 175 feet from the river, denitrifying septic system, leaching area of infiltrators. And the buildings are well out of the any resource areas. And the system was moved over here to meet the 100 feet to the well. I think they had a replacement well here that was less than 100 feet from the existing septic system. And to do erosion control so that we don't have any siltation into the river during construction until the site is stabilized with vegetation. I think that describes the project.
Thank you, Wendy. Chris, do you want to do your report?
Yes, Richard Giardelli and Susan Schlesinger, 99 Cummings Lane. This is a notice of intent application. Plan is drawn by AVT Associates. Wendy Henderson is here representing. Report date is September 21st, 2022. There is a file number with no adverse comments. It's SE 802652. As the abutter notifications have been provided. Site visit was also on September 20th, 2022. Description of the work: the owner has filed to replace the sewage disposal system with a denitrification component in the outer riverfront area. The work is within the lawn area and will require the movement of an existing shed. The system will be raised above existing grade, and minor grading for the slope will end up toward the river. The septic tank and pump chamber are just beyond the limits of the riverfront area. Erosion controls will be staked below work area and remain until the area is seeded. The owner is also proposing 2 buildings beyond the flood zone and riverfront area, outside of our jurisdiction, and do not require Conservation Commission approval. Respectively, they will put there for the connection to the systems and for Board of Health reasons when the design is reviewed. Recommendations: Westport Conservation Commission should approve the repair of the sewage disposal system in the outer riverfront area for file number SC 802652. And Wendy, do you know if Board of Health is
I don't
pending?
know for sure, but
All right, I would mention pending Board
the
of Health.
consensus was they thought it had been approved. It's been over there a while, I guess.
Thank you.
Haven't heard any major comments.
Any questions from the table?
That's it. No.
All right, looking for a motion, and that motion would include the pending the Board of Health approval on that system.
I'll make a motion to do the repair pending Board of Health.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Please, Kathy. Phil.
Thanks, Wendy.
Thank you.
He changed the garage design though, right, to two buildings separate. You originally had one, right?
Yes, the two separate.
Was that because of Board of Health reasons, or, you know?
I think trees.
Oh, I see.
saw those on the property.
I
So
gotcha,
one-
I gotcha.
one was there.
Yeah, because he did have kind of it centrally right near that end of the driveway, so he kind of seems like he
Yeah.
separated.
Because of trees.
All right, no worries.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Next hearing is, we have DeMaggio Coric, RDA, 2 Atlantic Ave. Do we have Mr. Potter's here for that one? Do we have the green cards on this?
This is RDA.
We don't need that.
This one that gets circulated.
Yep.
Back of this, you can see the before and after.
Okay. I'll send that in.
And then
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Good.
Len Potter here, Westport Environmental Design for the Mongo Coric. Property is located at the corner of Howard Road and Atlantic Avenue. Address is 2 Atlantic Avenue. There's an existing home on the site, that's gonna be partially demolished. But the retaining walls here will be in some of the garage walls, but everything is gonna go up to elevation 23, actually. First horizontal, number 23. The flood zone is shown in pink, the top of the page, that's elevation 21. The septic system's past Title V was installed a few years ago, so there's nothing there for that. We're going to install stormwater drains located here at the front of the property, and other than that, it's knocked down and rebuilt per floodplain regulation, so there's no major excavation on the lot at all. The piers are gonna be concrete piers, and they're shown on the periphery of the proposed house and some down the middle. So it's a pretty simple project. The only resource area is the flood zone.
How, can I just ask you a question? How do they propose to install these concrete piles?
Concrete pile.
So the house has to be demolished, right?
It's gonna be demolished, yeah. What's
Okay.
gonna stay is these 2 retaining walls.
It's a nice house.
They're gonna keep a garage down here.
Right.
And then what they're gonna do is they're gonna use the concrete walls that are here to create the basement.
I just want to
It's
see.
just gonna be used for storage and parking, no utilities. Everything has to go up.
So there will be a preserved area of that old garage, roughly?
Right in here, yes.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
My report does mention no roof runoff contained, because the first plans I had did not necessarily identify it, but Lenny did provide the plan you see before you now, and that was one of my concerns, because you can see in that photo the leader draining right out onto the street, so I think that's important, besides other. This is DiMaggio Curic, 2 Atlantic Ave, request for determination, Westport Environmental Design, with Len Potter representing. This report dated September 21st, 2022. This does require a review, I think Lenny understands, with ZBA, as well as the Board of Health might have some concerns for there being no denitrification system with this extensive remodeling or reconstruction of the structure. I know ZBA is needed because you're exceeding the lot significantly with this new building. So speaking with the commissioner, building commissioner, he mentioned that most likely would be seeing a ZBA review. The owner has filed a request for determination to request approvals to demolish a structure and rebuild a new one on an elevated foundation above the FEMA flood elevation of 21. The requirements under the Wetlands Protection Act require the applicant to obtain or apply for all obtainable permits, variances, etc. In this case, the applicant does need, in my opinion, to go before the ZBA as well as the building commissioners, obtain their approval, as the new structure is significantly larger than the existing. The new structure will cover practically the whole lot area. It's approximately a 4,000 plus square foot structure. on this 10,080 square foot lot. So there is a significant amount of change compared to what's there now. That's why I wanted you to see the before and after in the filing, because you can see this new structure covers the entire home that is there now. Measures should be provided to protect the site from runoff. There are no erosion controls, at least on the first plan. Do you have them on this plan? Nothing shown on the street?
No.
I think this is a big project for a request for determination. So recommendations, Westport Conservation should issue a positive determination, box 3, and require the notice of intent be filed for this new construction. They do provide stormwater management. And the project is subject to a ZBA approval. I want to make that known. That is all, Mr. Chairman. The reason I'm saying that, Len, is that's a brand-new house you're building in a flood zone. It's not like a little repair or, I mean, that's a pretty significant excavation on a marginal lot that you're gonna have them relocate material, you're gonna be potentially in the groundwater. There's no detail on how the footings are being put in, so there's some information I think that is lacking on this particular application. That is all, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Chris. Do we have any questions from members of the commission?
Just out of curiosity, is the whole structure lead, or did you say just above the garage and that part?
The garage, this part of it's gonna remain,
The main house,
yes.
okay?
But the house, this is the house also, that's coming down. And then the new house is gonna encompass everything inside this rectangle here.
Can you just show on the picture real quick?
The RDA shows it
It's
best.
down that way.
Yeah.
This is gonna stay.
The before
right
and
across
after.
here. When you get to this point here, that foundation goes back. So this house, this part of the house sits above the garage, and this is on piers already back here. The problem is the house was burned at one point in time, and it's got a tremendous amount of mold, and they don't want, and the remediation is horrendous. So they just assume get everything above the flood zone and build the house correctly. They intend to retire here.
Cool, okay, thank you.
Okay?
I just had a somewhat abstract regulatory question, or, which is this also land subject to coastal storm flowage?
This is a flood zone, yes.
Okay,
Yes, it's a velocity zone, so yes, it's subject to wave action.
Yeah,
right, yeah,
Yeah.
okay. I mean, there's no performance standards now, but
No,
I know that, but I was just in terms of,
there is
My own-
reclassification pending
yeah,
for,
right,
right.
but also it's,
The criterion of whether you need to issue a notice of intent is it gonna alter the resource area? Remove, fill, dredge, or alter. So do we think it's gonna alter a resource area enough to, even though it's big compared to the lot?
right, it's, the entire activities in a resource area, which is the flood zone.
Yeah. So I
There's
guess,
no change in topography. It's to get those pier footings in the ground, get the piers out of the ground. There's no cutting or grading anywhere, so.
You gotta dig to put a footing in though, Len, these are all tied together structurally, right, yeah, so there is
I
a,
checked with you before I filed, and you said RDA, and now you say NOI, which is fine.
well, I didn't really expect a brand-new house being put in, Len, this is
Well, I
a,
did check.
this is a brand-new structure, this isn't just an addition or a septic, again,
No problem.
So do we have a motion, the recommendation from Chris in front of us, a positive determination, box 3, and require an NOI?
yeah, so I'll move to adopt Chris's recommendation to require the issuance of a notice of intent. And I don't know, is there any conditions relative to ZBA approval? Do you want to say anything about that?
no, that's not my
Okay.
wheelhouse, but
Okay.
speaking with Ralph, it is
Okay.
a pretty small, it's an undersized lot that as soon as something is done on these now, ZBA is asked to review. Whether, I understand they probably will not come back with a detrimental finding, but it's still something that they would have to consider.
So Phil made a motion, do we have a second on that?
What would be in an NOI that is not in the RDA? What would they have to put in the NOI? Why would it be different?
It'd be more detailed on the drawings. There is no cross-section of the footings, depth of groundwater, there is no profile of that activity.
Yeah. All right.
Basically, 18 pieces of paper protect more than 4, so, there you go. Neither one will stop a bullet, but there you go.
Is there a second on that?
I'll second.
All in favor?
All right.
Opposed? It's unanimous.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. It's gonna be neighbors.
Well, that's maybe why they didn't want to notify abutters,
I know.
'cause
Like, I'm looking at.
there is no aesthetics in our
I just looked at the
purview.
neighborhood. I was like, oh boy.
Plus going up, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Can
to
you-
23 with the first floor.
Kevin, can you include the plan you have and the picture in that folder when it gets to you?
That's,
Third hearing that we have is Jonathan Costa, XL Westport Properties, NOI 37 Charlotte White Road. Thank you. Thank you. We lost Chris, but you can go ahead, Steve.
Okay, good evening. For the record, Steve Gioso with Civil and Environmental Consultants, representing XL Recycling here this evening. This is the property on Charlotte White Road. It's been an existing facility for many, many years. And the applicant is proposing to install stormwater mitigation measures for the property. At the present time, there's really kind of an uncontrolled flow through the site. Just for orientation on the plan, Charlotte White Road to the south of the activity, just off the drawing here. The entrance to the property is here on the eastern side of the site. There are two resource areas. There's a bordering vegetated wetland that creeps into the property here on the east side, and then on the south and west side, there is another wetland with a culvert that connects the two through the site in this location here. So the idea in this case is, as you come into the property, there's a paved area near the existing buildings. People check in at the office, which is the first building closest to the public street. Then they continue on through, go through the scale area. There's an elevated scale in this location, and then come into the recycling portion of the site. Right now, drainage drains generally from the west to the east, kind of funnels through, and at this time, actually funnels underneath the scale and discharges into the bordering vegetated wetland here to the east of the site. There's also some portion of runoff based on the topography that kind of sheets, kind of cross slope, goes to the south and enters this particular wetland here. So what we're looking to do is control the runoff on the property a little bit more specifically. So on that southern side, that upper wetland, we're proposing a very small berm to be constructed. This would intercept any of this water and then direct it where we want, which is down to this lower area here, kind of the natural collection point. In that area, we would grade it, create a sediment sump area, and basically a stormwater mitigation basin that would slow the velocities down, allow for sediment to settle out. At the outlet point of the basin that we would be creating, we have a concrete structure. That structure would have a solid baffle on the structure, and the baffle is intended to serve as you would in a septic tank. It keeps any floating materials trapped within the basin. Their maintenance people would come in, clean out as it accumulates. So that would keep any floating debris from migrating down gradient into the resource areas and off-site. and also trap the sediment flow, slow the velocities, get better sediment control on the property. And then we're also proposing an oil boom across, just up gradient of the scale in this area here. Again, as a supplemental measure to collect any oils or floating petroleum products, would absorb it, and then we would maintain and clean that periodically with a licensed company. Come in, they would actually change out the boom yearly and remove the used product from the site. There's also a portion of the drainage that kind of migrates from this back portion of the site and kind of sweeps around in this direction. So we also thought it would be helpful to add another sediment basin in this area. Same exact concept with a sediment sump, the boom, and a baffled outfall. So again, we're getting much better control on the flow of water through the site, and also on the water quality leaving the property. And then finally, we have a proposed storm scepter unit, which would be a water quality unit, picking up the paved area here, with a water quality unit that will collect, treat for suspended solids that may collect on the paved surface. And we're also going to eliminate a little piece of asphalt that's down in this area here and a piece of asphalt here. So eliminating a little bit of the impervious surfaces. We are not looking to expand the operation for the facility, so this is really strictly a stormwater mitigation plan. We do have erosion control running along the eastern edge of the work zone, so we would have that temporary construction sediment control for the project. It is a buffer zone project. We're not proposing any activity within a resource area. We know I've had a couple of discussions with Chris about the project. He's looking for us to provide some additional information. We did dig up the as-built plan for the septic system. That's not on the original plan. Septic system consists of a septic tank, a pump chamber, a force main. They had tie information to the distribution box and a observation port. So that's located here. We do meet the minimum setbacks from Title V from a detention basin. So what we're proposing here would not impact the existing septic at all. But Chris rightfully asked for that to be added to the plan. And he's asked us to gather some additional, I think, groundwater information and maybe reevaluate the grading in the basin and see if we can get some groundwater separation. We would look at this as a redevelopment of the site per se, because it is a improvement without expansion of activity. It does include elimination of impervious surfaces. We think it'll be a pretty big improvement over what happens today with stormwater runoff. And Chris has also asked that we evaluate the front. There's, as you might expect, some level of sediment coming here. There's a gravel parking area, then pavement on the apron. So we can take a look at whether there's an opportunity to get some stormwater mitigation in place for that area as well. So with that, we will be looking for a continuance tonight, probably 4 weeks. That'll give us time to schedule a backhoe, do a couple of test holes. We know there were test pits done in 2015 near the leaching field. But again, those are up gradient, so we want to do something a little bit more situated where these two basins are proposed to go, and we think hopefully that gives you a more complete picture of what we're proposing here. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Steve. Just, I have a Google map photo. And
I was just gonna ask, do they plan on having any grass or grown? I mean, the site is just, I understand the site, Steve, so we just had it, but are these ponds gonna have, like the berm, is that gonna have grass on it, or?
Yes.
Okay, so there are some greenery areas where we
Yeah,
could say,
the berm area will be
As well as
grass,
you can take,
and we're actually gonna try and isolate this area as much as possible. We do have a guardrail here to isolate the basin on
Okay.
the work area. We haven't looked at any other controls to do this, but what's happened here is basically the water collects here, you'll see
Oh,
over
you can
time,
see it right in that photo, yeah, that it's all underwater
puddles
right
right
there.
up gradient of
Right in
that.
the area you're showing, correct.
So that's why we think this is an ideal situation to get some real controls once and for all on a site that's probably been here for, what was Thad's before
60 years.
Excel, so 50, 60 years. So we think this will be a big improvement once we work out the details to the commission's.
And the scale is, I know is raised, but your proposal is to allow that water to continue to flow
Yeah,
underneath the
Yeah,
scale.
it's completely
Okay.
open underneath, and that would be maintained as an open flow area through there, yep.
All right, I will proceed to my report, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
This is Excel Recycling, 37 Charlotte Way Road. This is a notice of intent application presented by CEC. Steve Giosis here this evening. Report dated September 26, 2022. I don't know if we got the file number yet. Is it on the front cover of that green folder? Flip that over.
I do not see it on there.
No.
Oh, SC 802653,
We do, 2653. We do have a file number.
unless that's.
No, that's the file number. Description of the work. Again, the applicant has filed to construct stormwater mitigation controls in the buffer zone for the commercial site. The area has and is being used as a metal recycling facility. The site is the former Thad's Junkyard that operated for many years. The majority of the rear site area is hard-packed gravel from years of use for car storage. The applicant is operating a facility that can be considered a site with potentially higher pollutant load. Wetland areas have been delineated and are shown on the plan. The wetland line is accurate as represented. And they are shown as wetland flags A1 through A15 on the upper wetland and B1 through B19 on the lower wetland. These two wetlands are connected by an existing drainage pipe. This pipe drains through the middle of the facilities. And I always question it, but I would bet it's crushed, but that's another story. The drainage calculations, long-term pollution prevention plan, operation and maintenance plan, and stormwater checklist have been provided. That is all within the packet. It will be noticed that the site has never had any stormwater mitigation measures over 40-plus years. We're looking at a site that has been in this condition for quite some time. So this is me considering it is a drastic improvement to whatever they may contain. The drainage mitigation is proposed to the rear of the site. The proposed work has been filed as a redevelopment project under the stormwater regulations. 2 detention basins with sediment sumps and an outlet control structures are proposed. They are also installing 1 storm septic unit in the paved section along the entrance to the scale. The information provided does not include test pits for depth to groundwater in the proposed pond locations. The design is confusing, but appears the water will drain under the existing scale. I have some concerns for the project that need to be considered. The site always has debris on the road from trucks exiting the site. Why are no mitigation measures addressing the front portion of the site, as Steve mentioned? The outflows shown are within 25 feet of BVW edge. I suggest greater setback from the BVW. I don't know if it's possible to angle these outflows rather than have them go straight towards the wetland. They do have adequate stone riprap pads, but they are, we like to see things stay at least 25 feet away. I know conditions are tight here, but I think they could make this maybe a little more vegetated of a swale, something along those lines. The outflow shown are within 25 feet. I suggest storm septic outflow. Is it possible that that discharge go into the detention pond? That would eliminate one of those outflows. Roof runoff to dry wells should be considered to eliminate clean water from dirty water. That's always a suggestion, but in this case, the C&D soils that are present on this site may not make that absolutely beneficial. But I always find that you treat clean water is not advantageous. It's better to try to separate the two. There is 2 considerably sized roofs here that are generating a lot of water, so that is a consideration for the design engineer maybe to come up with maybe a suggested idea. The total TSS removal is mentioned at 80%. Nothing is indicated for the detention ponds. In this case, 80% is just for the storm septic unit. That doesn't govern 80% removal for the site. That is one particular facet of your mitigation. So I would like to see some more determination on what the TSS removal is for the whole project, including the ponds. Mass DEP requires pre-treatment BMPs for land uses with higher pollutant loads. The design does not include those that are recommended. That is usually an oil water separator, other proprietary BMPs that could be considered. That is something I would ask if you could look at. I understand the oil water separator is a lot of maintenance, but this oil boom, maybe a more regular replacement would be better than every year. I'm not sure what type of pollutant loads that they will see, but I know that visiting the site and dropping metal off, there is always some sort of product that comes in that they don't want to be there, and they end up with having to deal with it. So that's not necessarily their fault, but these things do occur, vice versa. The equipment coming in is dripping oil, you know how that tends to happen. So that's something. The soils on the site are classified as C and D soils, which are poorly suited for any infiltration. As Steve mentioned to me on the phone, this is not an infiltration setup. This is more of a containment and allow the settling of these suspended solids in the design that he has here. As he mentioned, that baffle structure is utilized to allow those flotation of debris and stuff not to necessarily flow out, but they also can tend to plug. And that could be a concern as well, that these areas are gonna plug now, and now the pond, nobody wants to put boots on to get in there to maintain it, but that is something that, I'm trying to look at a system that is easy for the applicant to maintain and not have needing of, babysitting on every rain event. That's just my suggestion on this type of commercial operation. Recommendations, this is, again, as Steve mentioned, this is entirely a buffer zone project. The confines of this property are demarcated by that old wooden fence, which is just seen on the lower east side. You can see it up on the west side. Thad's has had this barrier up, and I think Excel has upgraded it over the years for noise and other reasons for the ZBA prior concerns that I think the neighbors addressed. So recommendation, Westport Conservation Commission should request applicant continue the hearing, provide additional data, test pits with depth of groundwater, redesign of outflows to provide further setbacks from the BVW, total TSS removals for all design stormwater mitigation measures, and stormwater design to include something within the front portion of the site. So Steve, as mentioned, is willing to move forward with a continuance. I suggest, as he had requested, of a 4-week time frame for him to get and do those pits. If that changes, we will be notified, and we may ask that it go to the following meeting.
Sure.
Thank you. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Chris. Any questions from the table?
Well, I guess to say that I agree with Chris that this is obviously gonna be a big improvement, whatever it is, and it shouldn't be like a no good deed goes unpunished kind of approach, and I'm not really familiar with the pretreatment BMPs, but it did occur to me that if we were going to pick and choose, that having some water quality information might be worthwhile to have. So if we knew there was particular pollutant or a particular heavy concentration of oil, hydrocarbons in the water, rather than saying put in an oil water separator, just, because it's available to actually be able to look at the water quality and, make an educated decision about, what we want coming out of all the treatment before it gets put in the wetlands. So that's just a suggestion to consider.
Anything else? My only recommendation is, as Chris mentioned, is towards the front of that property, obviously. If you're gonna spend all the time and resources on this, probably address kind of the front parking that ends up on Charlotte White Road anyway.
Yeah, we've done the survey, so we've got the topography and the information. We should be able to come up with something to address that, because it does eventually drain into the same wetlands, so.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Do we have a motion to continue the Excel recycling for 4 weeks till 10/25?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
All right.
Opposed? It's unanimous. It was
Thank you, Mr. Giosi.
Kevin.
Thank you.
We'll see you again
Of course you will.
before February.
You'll miss me.
I certainly will. Your lawyer tactics are, you know, very well suited.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is certificates of compliance. The first one we have is Douglas Perini, 1634 V Drift Road. Chris?
Correct. Douglas Perini, 1634 V Drift Road. This is certificate of compliance, not CC, my initials. I forgot to put the O there. This is September 22nd, date of the report. The file number for this project was SC802634, so this was not that long ago. Detailed description of the work. The engineer of record has provided a letter stating all work has been completed according to the plan of record. The applicant constructed a seawall above mean high water using field stone. This was Cabral's walls that initiated the work. The area is stabilized and seeded, areas are growing. This was a rebuilding of that wall. So recommendations, Westport Conservation Commission should issue a full certificate of compliance for the rebuilding of that field stone wall for file number SC802634.
Thank you, Chris. Do we have a motion to approve the certificate of compliance?
I move we issue a certificate of compliance for file number SC 802634.
Second?
Second.
Bert and Phil, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It's unanimous. Chris, just a quick question. On the continuance on the other one, we do not have to do anything for that, right? Or do we have to sign that one?
No.
Okay.
No, it stays until the vote is made to sign, so.
We got another certificate of compliance, Aberdeen Shores, 1634 Drift Road.
This is the same wall that was extended onto the common land of the Aberdeen Shores Condo Association. Again, the engineer of record has provided a letter stating all work has been completed according to the plan of record. This is file number SC802633 for the common land located on 1634 Drift Road. The condo association extended the fieldstone wall across the common property located adjacent to Douglas Perini. So this was a piggyback project together. The engineer got both parties to agree because two separate owners, that's why we had the separate NOI. So the work has been completed as well, and the area is seeded and stabilized. Recommendations, the Westport Conservation Commission should issue a full certificate of compliance for file number SC802633, Aberdeen Shores, 1634 Drift Road.
Thank you, Chris. Do we have a motion to approve the certificate of compliance?
So moved.
Second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous, Leon. Phil and Bert. Thank you. Another certificate of compliance, Alice Pomeroy, 135Q, Cadman's Neck Road.
Yes, Alice Pomeroy, 135Q Cadman's Neck Road, certificate of compliance requested by the owners. This date of the report is September 22nd, 2022. The file for this project was SC802565. Description of the work, the applicant has filed for certificate of compliance for the tight tank installation at the cottage on Cadman's Neck, 135Q. The work is completed and the area is seeded and growing. Work has been completed according to the plan of record. This was, again, occurred earlier in the spring. This area grew and established itself. You may not recall the neighbor, Mr. Dubois came in. He actually allowed them to access across the project that he is currently proposing in order for them to get these two tight tanks. The next one is similar in sequence. So the first one went in, filled it in. They went and did the second one, and then they seeded the area on the way out. So it was a joint effort to remove those old cesspools. So recommendations, the Westport Conservation Commission should issue a full certificate of compliance for the septic system for the tight tank installation at 135Q Cadman's Neck, file number SE 802565.
Thank you, Chris. Do we have a motion to approve certificate of compliance?
I'll make a motion that we approve the full certificate of compliance for file SE 802565.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Kevin and Phil? All the, yeah,
Okay.
Phil was
It was
super,
perfect either way.
either way. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous, Leo. Last certificate of compliance, which obviously goes along with the previous one we spoke about, Alan Windsor, 135R Cadmus Neck Road.
Correct. Alan Windsor, 135R Cadman's Neck, certificate of compliance, dated reported September 22nd, 2022. The file number for the project, SE 802567. Again, these projects went hand in hand. The applicant has filed for a certificate of compliance for the tight tank installation at the cottage on Cadman's Neck. The work has completed and the area is seeded and growing. Work has been completed according to the plan of record. Again, this was a joint effort, removing a cesspool and replacing it with a confined system on the banks of the Westport River in this neighborhood of Cadman's Neck. Recommendations, the Westport Conservation Commission should issue a full certificate of compliance for file number SC 802567 for the tight tank installation at 135R Cadman's Neck Road.
Thank you, Chris. Do you have a motion to approve?
I move we issue a certificate of compliance for file number SC 802567.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Bert and Phil, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous, Leo. Okay, do we have, Chris, do we have any unanticipated business to cover?
I just have a quick concern that has been addressed or brought forth. The selectmen have received some recommendations from departments on 61A releases not to release the property. And this has come under a slight discussion from the selectmen. They are trying to change their procedures for these types of things. And in the future, if the commission chooses not to recommend it, they are asking that we be more specific. Funding sources that we may think are available to buy the property, and specifically reasons why. So we recently had the solar project by a company on Paul Gay's land on Division Road. The solar company has only entered into a purchase and sales, but immediately it automatically gives the appearance that solar company is going to annihilate another wooded forest. So the commission members have expressed their concerns in the past, and I explained to Jim Hartnett, the town administrator, why the commission had felt that way, and that we did not feel any hard feelings if the selectmen chose to obviously release it. But he is trying to develop some sort of guidance procedures that if the board chooses to, that he may ask that they appear before the selectmen's meeting at that so-called discussionary time to express why. So I'm just bringing it forth to the commission members. In the future, if we do, we should be a little more specific to that so that we don't end up in a confrontation on why we chose to be that way. So,
Chris, my only concern with that is that in the past, we've always been told that our vote is essentially non-binding. So I think we're probably in a situation where we voted down a 61A on a property that was going to be clear-cut to put solar in place, that, and if you're going to be a rational individual, you're going to realize that that's probably not best for the environment, right? So the selectmen have a little bit of a difficulty going out on a limb and putting their names on the line on a solar project that probably is, why wouldn't they? Do they not want to take a tough vote on that?
I agree with that, and the selectmen still can act on them.
Exactly.
They are just trying to cooperate with the boards and make sure that there isn't something more specific that the members may have or know of. So, I think some members are familiar with the recent recent transpondence with a 61A release where the selectmen chose to turn that to Buzzards Bay project for a purchase of a area off of Main Road that we had signed off. Apparently the planning board didn't, and AgCom, and it kind of came to an emotional meeting where the potential buyer was very upset and maybe not very familiar with the procedures of how the town has first right of refusal, and that they can exercise their rights and actually turn it to an entity to pursue the purchase of said land. So I just want that to be, for us, just to be more specific so that we can clearly express our concerns. And the selectmen may take action, or they may consider our concerns. So that's all. I'm just trying to keep the loop going and not tie it up with some questionable concerns that may not be weren't really aired out at the meeting as well. So thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. You may proceed.
Thank you. All right, we have minutes. I guess we'll cover that after.
We're gonna do the letter?
Well, I was gonna do the bills and
okay,
then
and then
the letters in, do you wanna do the letter? No, the letter's at the end of this, I believe.
Okay.
So, do you wanna do the bills first? First bill we have is Chris for mileage, the amount of $423.74.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Do we all have to sign this, or just myself?
You can have everyone sign it. I know we were doing just chairman when COVID was around, but I believe you can pass that around now, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Next bill is WB Mason, the amount of $17.49. Do you have a motion to approve?
Motion to pay?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All set. The last one we have, the bill category is East Bay Media, a total of $234. Do you have a motion to pay?
Motion to pay.
Kevin, second?
Second?
Bill, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous.
And this is working out, we made that $75 flat amount, so it makes it easy for me. And they have been really cooperative, and there's human beings to talk to.
Excellent.
Well, that's
We're
good
making
then.
progress.
And to this day, they still haven't straightened out that $1,000 bill that's really $100 and some. I'm still waiting for them to do it. I figure when they get tired of waiting for the 1,000, maybe they will send me the bill so that I can pay it.
Well, that's Gannett, right? Yes.
And I can't, it's just.
Well, with interest rates rising now, maybe they'll be concerned. Before there was there was no money involved. All right, Chris, we have the letter that Phil was discussing.
Yeah, Phil drafted a letter that we kind of brought up at the last meeting for the clarification of our concerns for the pending superseding order of conditions from Mass DEP. Right after we did discuss this, I did forward Phil, finally, there's been some correspondence between the applicant, Mr. Corey, and the state in reference to a site visit, which it seems that we were kept in the dock about because I thought all parties were supposed to be notified. And I don't know if Brian was just sending emails to Gary McCutch, the representative of Mass DEP, for his concerns, but I did express to Phil and the members of the last meeting that I think we should forward George Campbell's report, or not his report, but in clarification, his points that he raised in that report to send to the board, DEP rather, for their consideration in their submittal of a superseding order. It's information we think that would be very important for all parties to have, and we think that DEP should help and maybe consider that, as well as the fact that some of the information represented was not necessarily accurate in representing of pumping of a well and the criteria under the acceptance of a public water supply. They may have not necessarily had the correct information, and we think that they as well should be reviewing this maybe more closely. So I think that in this letter, we should be sending it, as Phil does or may address in a moment, the Water Supply Division for DEP, as well as Gary McCutch, DEP Wetlands Section for this consideration. That's all. If
Thank you, Chris. Phil?
Yeah, so, I think it went from where we were, kind of somewhat frustrated by Mr. Corey's, seeming reluctance to allow, Campbell to come in and gauge the wells, you know, which is to determine, you know, the depth of groundwater, or the depth in the wells, because that kind of related to how the wells would be characterized. Then he submitted his report, and the report came back, you know, with a lot of inconsistencies. Not the report itself, but discussing the inconsistencies in it, and you know, it's and the fact that how I viewed it when I wrote the letter is when we made the decision. So our decision on the last order was in a couple of parts, and one was to allow the restoration to go forward. The other was to allow certain work to go forward, infrastructure work on the wells, and then, but we reserved the right to review further the operation. And so what I felt was, in light of Campbell's report, and to a certain extent discrediting the data upon which the water supply permit had been issued, which I think, in light of, and I forget the gentleman's name, but Mr. Corey's hydrogeologist.
Peter Dillon.
Yeah, Peter Dillon, who was saying, you know, there's no connection between the superficial aquifer and, you know, and that, that this was an opportunity both to correct that, give DEP the opportunity to decide whether or not they wanted to correct that, have a re-review and correct that information, and that would also serve to provide information that we would need on the operational part going forward, because that's really what people are focused on. But what I also suggested in the letter is that in light of the Campbell report, that they not be permitted to go forward with the infrastructure work, because I think we were relying on the fact that they had, you know, I'll call it a valid approval from the water supply program. Now it seems to, if Mr. Campbell's report proves to be accurate, you know, that it was based on flawed data. So that's what I think was a package deal, and so that's what I think, you know, we should, you know, try to get some more clarity on what the situation is.
And that's what the letter expresses.
And that's a letter, but allowing the replication to go forward.
Correct.
Which,
Which we think is obviously been,
are they running out of time on that too? Isn't
well, the state still keeps the permit active when they
Okay.
trigger a request of more information, so no. I think they still have a valid ability to do it. Their original permit they had expired, which this
Okay.
one takes over, so.
Okay.
Yes, I think the replication is 5 years waiting, so we definitely would, I would think that would be a positive step by the board.
So, yeah, and so I think that we should go ahead with the site visit is, you know, conducted to delineate the resource areas, and also to move forward on the, you know, on the replication. And I kind of view it as, you know, there is a wetland program and there is a water supply program, but this is kind of a letter to DEP as a whole and saying, you should take a look at this thing, you know, and whether the response comes through the wetlands program or the water supply program, at least it will give us guidance as to what we may need to do in the future if they come back and say we want to operate. Because I would be, based on what we're reading, it would be, you need to start from scratch and redo this thing, plus we want surface water monitoring wells. So, anyway, so I would move that we, send this letter out.
Second.
Chris, we're gonna take a vote on this tonight. Since
Yes,
it's okay.
yep, there you go. Call it.
Oh. Oh, that would be an H, yeah. Mhm.
Well, I don't know how, if I corrected, what is it?
The C in his last name should be an H.
Oh, because, yeah.
Right there.
Oh, it's an H,
Yeah,
McCutch.
yeah, I mean, in the.
Oh, good catch.
In the deer
Yep,
list.
I can take
One
care
more.
of that, yep.
I was gonna read through it again before,
No worries.
you said to do it too.
No, I read through it, I think it was very good. I agree and echo your sentiments on the, we put a little bit of a good faith belief in that the data that were being presented. Fortunately, we were able to get a third party to review that. So, we have a motion, I think Phil made the motion, Kevin seconded that for us sending this letter to DEP. All those in favor? Opposed? It's unanimous, Leon.
Thank you, Phil.
Thanks, Phil.
Oh, yeah, welcome, yeah. And we'll also, send copies of the report to the other parties.
Yes, I will.
So that's good.
Do you have anything else before the minutes, Chris?
No, I do not.
Actually, we have a few outstanding minutes that we still can't address based on attendance. But the 9:13 meeting we can do because it was the same group that is sitting here right now for the minutes. So, do we have a motion to,
Stalwarts.
do we have a motion to approve the minutes from 9:13?
So moved.
Second.
Phil and Bert, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Do I have to sign these, Leon?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Just,
See who's on,
it's the four of us, the same.
no, who's on the signature, I don't know who ran the meeting.
I did.
Okay.
Oh, my name is there. I guess I would have to look at page 2. All right.
There's so
I'll put
many
that
over
one
here.
The only other thing I had, Chris,
Yes.
it's more of, we approved a lot of the projects down at the State Beach or Horseneck Beach, and they've been doing a lot of work down there. It looks really good, so give them credit if you talk to them. The beach looks in great shape. I mean, granted, we're almost in October, but
No, that campground improvement was really,
But I'm even talking beachfront now,
Yeah.
down towards the state. The beach looks in probably the best shape it has. Very little cobble. I think that's a result of Mother Nature, unfortunately.
yeah, I think she's been, yeah.
Very kind. No storms. Not many nor'easters. But it looks very good. And hopefully next year they can maybe get before us a little bit earlier, before the deadline of the April 1 kicks in, where they can't do the work, or April 15th or whatever. So,
Yeah.
but it looks very good. So if you talk to
Thank you.
Jeff or
Yeah, Jeff would
someone else-
really like to hear that. I know he doesn't get many accolades, but
No, I
he
want.
had a tough season and came fast, and like you said, he's done a pretty good job with a little mini machine he's got.
Mini machine and mini staff, I think, you
Yeah,
can only do
so-
so much. But, and then the only other thing is the access road is, I joked about it being a super highway, but it gets a lot of people going through it. It's a very nice addition, that paving they did down there. So,
Yeah, I think people don't realize how dramatic that is actually used. If no matter which end you go to, either your end,
Yeah.
where you see a lot of it, or you go over to the other parking lot towards Gooseberry, that is
Yep.
significantly, to the point where, as I mentioned to you, when they had the barricade up, they were putting bicycles over the top of it, just in order to go walk around the fence by the ocean to ride it. That's how
Yeah.
determined people were, so.
Yeah.
No, I think it's a valuable part of it, and accessibility for injuries and all those emergency reasons are definitely
Yep.
Well, having
warranted.
liked it a lot and always You bet you'd hit every,
Yeah.
you know, bang, bang. Now it's just so smooth.
Yes, well, he had, the thing he did, he tried to bring the road to the sand to try to keep that, because they had them big underlay, and everything was getting undermined, and,
Yeah.
The only issue they have is about 3/4 of the way down that wind-blown dune
yes,
gets all
that
wind blown.
always goes across.
But if they threw some snow fence up there, I bet you could slow that down.
Yeah,
at least
maybe I'll
build that-
mention that to him.
build
'cause
that dune
I'm-
back up.
Yeah, I know I've tried to mention that to him in the past, and they have tried to do that more in their face of
Yeah.
where the beach goers go, but I think ultimately,
Yeah.
they try to collect sand, and that's how, if you remember, they got in trouble because they were trying to grab sand from the sides of the road, and they ended up going right into the dune. And so, yes,
But it looks good. It's in great shape. now,
Excellent.
So, all right, any other business?
no,
No.
sir.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Thank you for seconding that. Bert and Phil, and second. All in favor?
Uh,
Yeah.
Opposed? All right, thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.